It's not love, it's not love, it's not the time. Let it go, let it go, let it fly. It's not love, it's not love, it's not love.
I think you are going to love today's video. We are building a super light road bike. Not one of those exotic German carbon fibers hyperlight bikes. This is probably as close as it gets to being practical in day-to-day use, but also that point where the cost to weight benefit is probably just at that point of diminishing returns. We think we've got this absolutely spot on. Let's get started. Now, I should really point out at this point that we're building this for a very talented local graphic designer. So all the component choice is absolutely spot on with the colours. So this is down to this beautiful gloss black and gloss grey Ridley, which is going to match absolutely perfectly to the Campagnolo Chorus group set and the wheels that we have. Now, we've already done a little bit of preparation work on this before the video. So we fitted the headset just to make sure we've got all the dimensions absolutely spot on for our rider, but we've also fitted the bottom bracket as well. This is a press fit bottom bracket where the actual cups sit in and the bearings are on the actual cranks. We'll show you that in a second. And the reason we've done this is because there's just a few little inconsistencies in the frame that we wanted to sort out off camera before we press those in, just to make sure that we've got as perfect as an alignment as we can possibly get. So the first part of this build is we need to get the shifters on, but before we do that, we need to put it on its wheels so we get those shifters absolutely leveled. So this seems like a good idea to introduce the wheels. These are the Campagnolo Shamal Ultras. Again, those graphics are absolutely going to match this frame beautifully. All the shades of grey are correct. Now, this wheel is somewhat of a rite of passage in road cycling. I think most roadies have owned a wheel similar to this in its past. It's this classic 3-spoke design with big gaps in between and beautiful smooth running ceramic bearings. Now, they're not normally the wheels we recommend for modern bikes. They're a little bit narrow at just 17 millimeters, and they're definitely a dedicated climbing wheel. So they're very stiff to accelerate and about power transfer, but they can also be a little bit sketchy on the descents and a little bit hard underneath for like those long endurance rides. So the compromise here is very much beautiful for climbing, but comes with downsides as well. I want to show you something about these wheels which has been bugging bike mechanics ever since they were announced, and it's been quite a long time since they're on the market. This beautiful 3-spoke design is absolutely iconic, but it gives the question, where do you put the valve? Now, Campagnolo have put it here, where in theory it blends into the spokes. I bet until I pointed it out, you never even noticed. But should they have put it in the middle here where it would have been symmetrical, or do they try and hide it next to the other spokes? I don't know, but once you've seen it, you can't unseen it, sorry. I want to talk about these shifters because they are an example of fantastic product design. And what I mean by that, you might not like the curvy design and the ergonomics, but they look like they were intended to be used a certain way. And that is a real trait of Campagnolo design. Now, these just look, the whole ergonomics just look like they're being designed to be held a certain way, the way they fit in your hand. They sort of invite you to hold them just as the designer intended to do. Now, I personally prefer the SRAM shifting mechanism, but these have been designed in such a way that you just go, oh, that's how they were designed to be used, so that's how I'll use them, and that is genius product design. Okay, with that done, we now need to think about cable routing, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here because what we need to achieve is having a nice run of cable where the radiuses are wide enough that you get a really friction-free run of cable, but at the same time we don't want them touching the side of the head tube and rubbing off your beautiful black gloss paintwork. So what we're going to do is route the cables in such a way that they avoid the paintwork. Now, on this particular bike, it also means that the brake is going to come on the non-drive side, so we're going to need to loop the cables around, which is great because if we're here in the UK where we run our brakes all the way around, we're going to not have that problem where the brake is rubbing the side of the paintwork. But this does give us the problem that the cables need to switch over on the inside. So we're going to use some special cable liners here just to make sure those two metal cables aren't rubbing against each other and causing any sort of friction, which is pretty standard. It's something that we normally do here because We don't think you get any friction down there, but also it means that you get a much smoother cable run up here, so there's no tight corners up at the top of the handlebars here. And it also means that you're not rubbing your paintwork off. In my eyes, that's a win-win. So to give you an idea, we're going to go into the ferrule here, and we're looking for a beautiful smooth cable run. It's going to take us into the shifter, keeping it as short as possible so that if the handlebars turn all the way, we're not going to pull the ferrules out, but at the same time long enough that we keep the cable runs nice and wide radiuses so we get a smooth flow. So I think about there is perfect. I'm going to start taping these cables down against the handlebars, starting at the lever end, making it a really, really tight wrap and ending in a consistent point. Now, where these logos are make it really difficult, and it'd be really silly to kind of cover up the logos. So I'm going to make a decision on this case to try and end it where that DEDA logo is, and also where the O2 logo is. Now, I want to talk about the design aesthetic of the Campagnolo Chorus rear mech. A thing of beauty like everything they design, but it's a very organic design, lots of curves and sweeps and gaps. It looks very organic. Just like the shifters, that ergonomics really come through. And this is in the sort of conflict, if you like, with some of the mechanical aspects. So the front chain set, for instance, is actually quite an edgy design. It's got corners, it looks mechanical. Now, this actually ties in with the frame from Ridley here, which again, it has straight lines where it needs straight lines, but it also has lots of lovely curves where you expect to see those lovely curves. And I think this is a real design aesthetic that Campagnolo have always got right, mixing that organic nature of cycling as a sport with the mechanical nature of the bicycle and somehow tying those two together. I just like it, I think. I think it just works. Okay, it's time that we talked about this crankset. I even like the fact that the carbon fibre itself has kind of got those organic-y swells. It's not all like regimented crisscross design like you get on some things. The actual carbon layup is quite organic and lovely. Now, Campagnolo have a slightly different design to, well, pretty much anything else on the market. So we said earlier that the actual bottom bracket cups are kept in the actual frame, and the actual bearings are kept on the spindle itself here. And the spindle is actually in two halves, and these little teeth hold it together on the inside, and it connects in the middle with a big bolt like that. Now, arguments about the design here and there, in some instances I quite like it because the actual cups stay in the frame, and you're going to be doing less and less damage to your frame every time you remove a bottom bracket. So they just stay there, and it's actually these parts that get removed. You do need quite a special tool to remove it though, so that's it. We are done and finished, and there's no doubt about it, this is an absolutely beautiful bike. You can see all the attention to detail that has gone into this, not just in terms of selecting components, but down to all the different shades of grey and blacks that all just work together perfectly. Even the design aesthetic of the Campagnolo and the Ridley frame together just works. Just sign it off as a real designer bike. Now, the Campagnolo Chorus group set is one of those group sets which is like a rider's experience, if you like. And I liken it to going into like more of an artisan coffee shop where the coffee might be a bit rich and full-bodied for most people's tastes. But if you're a real coffee fan, you just get it. The Campagnolo group set is a little bit the same. There's definitely an experience to it. It's slightly noisy. The shifting is, it's got a feel to it. It needs a certain level of dexterity and feel to shift in it all. It works flawlessly. It's just got that little extra bite for those that really appreciate the art of changing gear and shifting will really appreciate, but it's not necessarily for everybody. It's one of those group sets which feel fantastic in the hand. It's beautiful to look at, and you can feel really proud to own it. It's probably the best way of summing it up. Okay, we're going to flick to some B-roll and give you some absolutely beautiful shots of all the attention to detail that we've put into this build, and I'll leave the wait until the very end.
I wanna take it back, but I can't.